Ukrainian officials say Russian attacks have killed 11 people in the past day, as the southern city of Zaporizhzhia comes under attack.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz calls for more military autonomy of the EU and reforms to expand the bloc. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban warns of serious dangers of migrant flows as it ramps up military defences along its borders.
Turkey's president confirms 41 people died in Friday's devastating coal mine explosion, vowing to end mining accidents. A new museum in Denmark marks a mass extinction event which wiped out more than half of all life on the planet some 65 billion years ago. Residents in the Ukrainian city of Zaporizhzhia have awoken to the sound of Russian bombardments, an assault involving kamikaze drones and missiles. A parking lot in the city bore the brunt of one strike, with cars destroyed and nearby buildings damaged. Dmitry Poshishuk says the bombing lasted about 15 minutes. If Ukraine stops resisting, these bombs and killings will intensify, he says. We can't give in to the Russian Federation. It's a terrorist country, a terrorist country. Ukrainian officials say Russian attacks have killed 11 civilians in the past day. Evidence on the ground suggests a number of the missiles recently launched had badly misfired, damaging mostly cars rather than disabling infrastructure.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz spoke at the Congress of the Party of European Socialists in Berlin, advocating for more military autonomy of the EU and better coordination of military efforts. Scholz also called for reforms of the European Union to make it fit for the admission of new countries. He says more EU members is good if we want to defend our values in a world that will soon have 10 billion people. A united EU of 27, 30 or even 36 states with more than 500 million citizens, free and equal, can bring its weight to bear even more strongly in this world. On Friday, Scholz welcomed Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez and his Portuguese counterpart Antonio Costa on Friday to discuss the energy supply situation in the EU, as well as the future of the Mid-Cat gas pipeline. The three leaders are in favour of the construction of the Trans-Pyrenean Energy Interconnection Pipeline, which is currently facing much reluctance from French President Emmanuel Macron. Scholz is pushing hard for the construction of the infrastructure that will allow Germany to become independent of Russian gas. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban warned of serious dangers at the country's borders during a speech at the swearing-in ceremony of new army volunteers and the handover of the first German-built Lynx combat vehicle on Saturday. He added Europe is facing a protracted war with Russia's ongoing invasion of Ukraine, and that Hungary needed to face reality with the flow of migrants. Mr. Orban says there is huge danger. In the east, the guns thunder and the war rages. And in the west, uncountable amounts of weapons flow to the front. And if that was not enough, Europe is besieged by tens and hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants on our southern borders. Armed groups of them are roaming the countryside. Hungary has seen a massive influx of migrants in recent months, most notably those entering from Serbia along the Hungarian-Serbian border. Many migrants are using Serbia, which is not part of the EU, as a loophole to try enter the European Union.
How are you, sir? Are you fine?
Turkey's president has confirmed 41 people have died from the devastating coal mine explosion in the country's north. The discovery of the final missing body brings the rescue mission to an end more than 20 hours after Friday's deadly blast. Recep Tayyip Erdogan has travelled to the site, vowing to bring an end to mining accidents.
We will determine how the explosion happened and whether there is anyone responsible through administrative and legal investigations. These investigations have already been launched.
110 miners were working underground at the time of the explosion. Almost half of them were more than 300 meters deep. Those lucky to survive emerged blackened and bleary-eyed. Family and friends have said goodbye to Selçuk Ayvaz, one of the 41 victims. The 33-year-old is survived by his pregnant wife and 2 children.
Aid organisations and the United Nations are calling for urgent famine relief for East Africa as the people of Kenya, Somalia and Ethiopia confront their worst drought for 40 years. Oxfam says food shortages are likely to cause 1 death every 36 seconds, while the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organisation says help is needed now.
We should not wait for a famine declaration to act, because then it will be too late. We know from 2011, when we faced a famine situation and a famine declaration, that by the time the famine was declared, half of the 260,000 people who died had actually already died.
4 successive seasons of poor rainfall have caused livestock to die and crops to fail, with rural populations in hard-to-reach areas of Somalia the hardest hit.
The current drought is the worst that we have seen in the last 4 decades. It has affected about 7.8 million people. So that just put things in perspective, this is about half of Somalia's population. 90% of the country is facing extreme drought.
High food prices caused by the war in Ukraine have exacerbated the situation, and the FAO also warns food instability is often linked to an increase in gender-based violence. The alert coincides with the United Nations World Food Day.
Two rival Tunisian opposition groups have staged one of the biggest days of protest so far against President Kais Saied, denouncing his moves to consolidate political power as public anger grows over fuel and food shortages. Saied, who moved to rule by decree after shutting down parliament last year, has said the measures were needed to save Tunisia from years of crisis. Protesters across Iran have defied a nearly month-long crackdown, chanting in streets and in universities against the country's clerical leaders. The demonstrations sweeping Iran, spurred by the death of Mahsa Amini, are posing one of the most serious challenges to the Islamic Republic since the 1979 revolution. Now protests have widened into strikes that have closed businesses and shops. Thousands of Spaniards are marching in the capital Madrid, demanding higher pensions and better salaries in the face of high inflation rates. New figures show Spanish consumer prices rose 8.9% year-on-year in September, down from 10.5% in the period through August, and slightly below the flash estimate of 9.0% released 2 weeks ago. Denmark's Queen Margrethe has opened a new museum at the UNESCO World Heritage Site Stevens Klint, marking a mass extinction event which wiped out more than half of all life on the planet some 65 billion years ago. This film shows what the fire and destruction that covered the Earth with an ash cloud for years would have looked like.
This is a global story that has importance for all of us. The mass extinction that killed off life and set the scene for the world we know today. And here we have an exhibition that goes straight to the heart. We have people crying seeing the exhibition. So come here, have reflections about your own life and life today, and feel hope that life is robust and will survive.
The interactive museum is built into Stevens Klint, the 15-kilometre-long fossil-rich coastal cliff 1 hour south of Copenhagen. The museum has even moved a big piece of the cliff into the building.
It was fantastic, interesting, and I think all people in the world may be interested in what they can see there. Children, grown-up, old people, everyone. It's so exciting.
9 years ago, UNESCO declared Stevens Klint a World Heritage Site, and the municipality has been working ever since to get the right kind of interactive museum up and running.